Hello friends! The T-chart exercise is something you can do every morning to better read the scale while you're changing your body composition. It's how you know what's temporary ups and downs or what's true body composition changes. It makes you so much more in tune with your body that you might even be able to predict what the scale will say before you even step on it. And it will completely change your relationship with the scale to see it as useful data. Today, in part 2 of this episode, I'm sharing how you can start doing this T-chart exercise today. So let's get into it. And per usual, just a little update. So I'm recording this ahead of time, but the week this gets released, I will likely already be in Utah setting up our new home. So we found a home that I absolutely love. It has some mountain views. It's in a good location and there's like 5 gyms around it. There's a yoga studio, there's a dance studio, and really the first week's just gonna be setting up from zero. We're literally moving in with 2 suitcases. I joked that on my list of important things that we need to get were things like garbage cans, and then right below it was cars. Like that's how you know you're really starting from zero. So we're gonna be tackling all of that first week that we're there, and then slowly building up and getting settled back in the US and back with our own home and things like that. So very excited for that. But I'm also excited for this episode because it is so helpful and so useful. So if you didn't listen to part 1, definitely recommend doing that first because it gives you an overview of how to think about the scale and the different aspects of why it changes up or down, short-term versus long-term. So you really want that information first. But now in this episode, I want to teach you the T-chart exercise. So there are 5 steps to the T-chart exercise to make it really beneficial for you to be more in tune with your body, have a better relationship with the scale, and really use it to be able to build muscle and decrease body fat. So what you do first thing every single morning is you have to track your weight every morning. The reason why you have to do it every morning is because the scale fluctuates every day and you want to be able to read through that. Just a one-time reading once per week is not enough. Now, I will say in Create Your Shape, initially I have ladies weigh themselves just once per week because we just want to keep like a finger on the pulse until they have this education and this understanding, so that way they know what to do with it. So if you're weighing yourself every day, you're gonna go crazy if you don't have this information. So I suggest waiting until you have this information to then weigh every day. And what that actually looks like, I mean, personally for me, I just do it in the Notes app in my phone. I write down the date, and then I put a dash, I write down the weight, and then I put a dash, and then I go into step 2. So step 2 is adding notes. And so this is where the T-chart exercise comes in. So think of the T-chart like a giant T where you have a line at the top and then a vertical line in the middle. On one side, on the left side, you'll have long-term changes. That's going to be muscle mass or body fat on the left. We talked about those. Those really are just going to happen over trends, over averages, over a week or weeks in months. So in the morning, every single day, that's going to be something separate. So on the right of your T-chart, you're going to separate out, okay, what are short-term fluctuations that change in the day-to-day? So that water retention and that inflammation or big food changes. So that's what you want to think about. In the past 24 to 48 hours, you want to think, before you step on the scale, what has happened that's going to influence water retention, inflammation, or food. I listed out a handful of things in the last episode, like travel, if you wake up earlier, if you sleep less, if you are more stressed, if you went on an airplane, if you had alcohol, if you had more sodium, if you're dehydrated, if you had different foods than normal, if you had inflammatory oils at a restaurant, right? You're going to be more inflamed the next day. If you're on your cycle or you're during a part of your cycle where estrogen is higher and holding on to more water, if you had more food that is in your body, or if you had less food, if you went to the bathroom yet, or if you didn't go to the bathroom yet. So think through these past 24, generally 24 hours, but 48 because things could still be lingering and impacting. And you're gonna write a note next to your weight based on why you think it may be up or down. Now, typically, you might have to do this a lot at first, but then typically you'll only do it on outlier weigh-in. So let's say the scale went up a half a pound or a pound, that's an outlier. You want to add that note in. Or if it dropped by that much, outlier, add that weight in. Because again, if you're on the left side of the T-chart, if you're on the long-term changes, you're only going to see maybe 0.1 to 0.25 down per day in terms of body fat, and then maybe 0.25 up per week in terms of muscle gain. So you're not going to see that big of a change day to day unless it is a short-term fluctuation and you want to know why. So you're going to take your best guess at first based on all the information you have so far. All right, that's step number 3. So step 1, you're going to track your weight daily. Step 2, you're going to think about it as a T-chart. And then step 3, you're going to add those notes next to your weigh-in. Step 4 is you're going to pick up on the patterns. At first, you are going to be guessing and you're going to be like, well, I'm on my cycle. Maybe that is why I've increased some weight right now. Or, oh, maybe that is why I'm dehydrated because I didn't get enough water in yesterday. Or maybe that is why the scale's up because I had inflammatory food last night out when I went out for dinner because it was Saturday night. You're going to guess at first, but then you're going to pick up on these patterns because you'll see the change because you'll have your notes that you can go back to, or you're just going to remember them because once it happens twice or 3 times, you're going to see that it is a pattern that continues to happen. All right. Then step 5, you are going to utilize these patterns when you are going to change your body composition, especially when you're going in a deficit. Here's some examples. You are going to track your trends weekly, right, to see if you're on track. Let's say the goal is 1 pound per week. If you are not down 1 pound per week, assuming you've executed it and you should be, you're going to go through and look at your daily weigh-ins and see what is an outlier. And if it's an outlier, if you're good at math, all right, we're going to remove that outlier and just look at the actual numbers that are not outliers to see if we're trending. Or you may even think, okay, but if I removed that pattern from the outlier, would I still be on track? This example would be, okay, I'm up a pound on the scale, but I had a later dinner last night. And normally, because this has happened 3 times over the past handful of months, if I have a later dinner, I know the scale generally goes up by a pound. And so then okay, that could be reduced by 1 pound. What does the trend look like then? So it makes it so much easier for you to read through the scale. Instead of the scale just being an emotional reaction, it changes it to see it as data. And that data is really useful when you're wanting to change your body composition, especially for the example of the deficit, because we should see that trend of decreasing body fat. And if not, we want to know why. Is it from these outliers? And then we can go dive in and say, what exactly was the outlier? Okay, if we remove that, we are still on track. We don't need to change anything. Or do we need to change something? And so it makes it so much clearer and gives guidance, and it helps you hit your goals faster because you know exactly what to do from that and what you need to change. Or specifically me, when I'm coaching my ladies, it lets me know exactly what I need to change when I have this information from them, and then they start to learn it as well. So I have a few examples that I wanted to show you so that you can actually do this and see what it looks like. So I'm pulling this from some of my clients. So one client, again, it's just listed on the date, and then it's going and listing her weight, and then she has a note beside it. Not every single day does she have a note, just if it's an outlier. So she wrote 133.2. Then the next day it was 134.2. All right, so that's a full pound increase. So she wrote an outlier, and she said cycle started, water retention. All right, that makes sense, right? We know why that increase was there. The next day, 135.2. All right, it's up again. Cycle, she put. Okay, we know that's cycle related. The next day, 135. She put a note that said cycle related. Yep, we got it. The next day, 134. So she went back down. She didn't put anything because we know she's just coming down. She's decreasing that water retention. Then she goes back to 133.6. All right, down again. Then she goes back to 132.6. Down again. 132.4. All right, by the end of the week, she is down more than she was at the beginning of the week, more than last week, because she's in the deficit. So basically the water came up, the water came off, and during that whole week, she trended a pound down. So we know, okay, it's working. We don't need to change anything. All right, another example, and this is somebody who was not in a deficit phase. She had 148.2, which was an increase from her previous week, and she put inflammation, comma, sleep, question mark. So basically she's saying like, all right, I think I'm inflamed. And then also it could be because my sleep wasn't as good. And I collect a lot of information. I get to know people. So I know if they struggle with sleep. I know if they typically get inflamed. So that's why her notes are kind of sparse, but it's helpful because she knows and I know. All right, then she doesn't have anything the next couple of days because they're pretty steady. And then she had a big drop, about 1 pound drop. And she put 2 skinny margaritas. All right, so typically what happens the day after alcohol, what can happen is you could be dehydrated from it. And so she noted that that's likely what was happening. And then 2 days later, she was up 2.5 pounds. And she put post heavy leg day. And then she put post 2 drinks 2 days ago. So if you, what can happen from alcohol is you get dehydrated and then you get inflamed. So then the scale goes down and then it goes up this is over like a 3-day period. All right, I'll give you one more example from somebody else. She had an increase from this, she was at 112.6, 112.8, 112.8, and then she went up to 113, which is not much, but she's really just noting. And she had sushi last night, which that will do it. If you're having more carbs than normal, if you're out to dinner and there's more sugar than normal, different sauces and seasoning, that will do it. And so she's really just learning her body here and learning how these different foods react and these different scenarios react. So all of this is just great examples of how you can track your weight with notes to understand your body better and really utilize this as a tool when building your shape. So happy tracking your weight with more information now, and I'll see you next week on the Create Your Shape podcast.